Fee presentation mistakes, which we are on page 37. You're following along in the songbook. Number one is, of course, establishing the precedent of free. It's hard to take that back. Very difficult. So when you do free, you got to think long and hard about it. Jay Abraham has a rap about, which is the way he handles it. He has a whole riff worth hearing about that he has decided for reasons X, Y, and Z to buy you a day of his time. And so making an exception and actually buying you his day. Really, he's doing a free day. Now, I don't like it under any circumstances, but it's a better way to say it. It ought to be the exception when there is free. Writing to assignment, we talked about that. Talking about money too soon. So that's right in line with writing to assignment. That's the answering the fee question or disclosing the fee before there has been a diagnostic conversation. So you're now talking money too soon. So how much do you charge to do a full-page magazine ad question will never get an answer from me. Because it's the wrong question. A, I don't know if we're going to do a full-page magazine ad. And B, I don't know if we're going to do one or we're going to do 20 variables. And I don't know what else we're going to need to do. And I do projects, not pieces. So let's have the conversation about what the objective is and how we're going to get to the objective. Then let's talk about the money. But we don't want to be talking about money first. Okay? Switching to a selling mode. You have to sell without it being overtly seen and perceived and felt as selling, which again is why diagnosis has to be part of the process. The selling mode is also, so the question that you just asked, right? Salespeople typically are defensive against objections. So the worst salespeople in the world play ping pong with their prospect. So the prospect raises an objection. They vigorously answer the objection. Prospect raises another objection. They vigorously answer the objection. Okay? People who are really good at it can sell that way and make a living, but it's kind of an ugly process. And it is clearly selling. So the position you don't want to be in is vigorously defending yourself against objection after objection after objection. You're perceived now as selling, not as consulting, and we want to be perceived as consulting. So for the most part, you solve it by getting all that stuff out ahead of time, and you being the one to raise it, not them raising it. Inviting negotiation. How do we invite negotiation? Well, attitudinally, people do it. Conversationally, it comes up. I mean, I have occasionally, recently even, had somebody, well, do you negotiate fees? No. Is this negotiable? No. And there's a process for figuring out what the fee is going to be, which they see the process implemented. So I'll show you that a little later. I wanted to share this on Money Too Soon. I just got this. This is April 16th. It's somebody that sent in. I asked my newsletter subscribers for stuff because I'm working on a book about price strategies. And they sent this in. This is a B2B marketer. I'm not going to read you the whole letter, but there it is. But so this is a company called Wheatmark. I'm not sure I even know what they do. Maybe he tells us. Finally, by May 1st, we were able to do what I think is the single most important price strategy that you teach. We took our prices off our website and stopped listing them altogether. The move was a scary departure for us, but soon we were laughing all the way to the bank as we doubled sales month to month from April to May. Here's just a few of the advantages we found of not having prices listed anywhere. Number one, it encourages a consultative approach to selling rather than an order-taking approach. Number two, it greatly reduces apples-to-apples price comparisons. Number three, it strengthens positioning in the prospect's mind. parentheses, we make them apply to talk to us too. And number 4, it allows us to raise prices at will. But the single most important reason to take your prices off your website is that doing so allows you to choose your customers. And he's absolutely right. I mean, price lists are for pizza shops. Price lists are not for professionals. You don't walk into the Cleveland Clinic and find a price list. There may be a day, but here's how you know if you have Obamacare. If the directions to your doctor's office say, turn left at the trailer park. I actually have a whole roster of them, but we don't have time. But you don't go into the Cleveland Clinic and find a price list. Right? That's not the way it works. And so it shouldn't work that way for us either. Problem clients, problems with clients very quickly. So, one is a client that just doesn't get it. They don't understand what it is that we do, and they're going to require way too much time in educating them, defending everything that you're doing. You have to make your decision about whether or not you want to be in that role or not. Number 2, refusal or inability to work with you as agreed. Key words there are as agreed. This whole agreements process with the client. And again, I'm going to give you contracts, I'm going to give you correspondence, we're going to get there. This whole agreements process with the client of here's how things are going to work. It's very important to have it so you can refer to it when they start to deviate. See, trying to fix them has bad behaviors surface that weren't discussed to begin with. It can't be done. It's not even fair. So you want an agreements process. If you're not familiar with it from the personal development side, it's an old book, but I suggest you find it. It's called the Book of Est. And it's an inside account of going through the Est program. You laugh. By the way, why do you laugh? Which? Oh, well, yeah, but that's its point. Werner and I are getting our hair cut next to each other in Pat Fripp's hair salon in San Francisco. First time I met him. And I said, I knew his predecessors. So Werner Erhard invented Est, if you don't. And so I said, off the record, sum up your business, Est, in 20 words or less. He says, we preach independence and we breed dependence. They mastered sell it by zealot, by the way. Maybe better than anybody else. But anyway, you should get the Book of Est. It's irrelevant what you think of Est. But they probably had the best agreements process. Really, the first 3 hours of the seminar was the agreements process. And it's in there, almost word for word. So it's worth reading and seeing a good agreements process. The agreements process with the client is important. And it needs to be paper trailed, not just said. So correspondence and contracts, you'll see it. Because then when they start to deviate, you get to play fair. You can say, wait a minute, here's what we agreed to. Right? Interference by committee, which has to be dealt with in your agreements process. Because this is one of the most common problems, is you thought you were dealing with John, and now all of a sudden John's got a whole closet full of nitwits who are weighing in on the process. It might be his board of directors, it might be his mother-in-law, it might be who knows, but all of a sudden, you're not dealing with John. You're dealing with some committee, and maybe you can't even get to the committee. Well, that's no good. So that has to be controlled from the beginning. Personality conflicts, conflicts of interest, of course, are legitimate. If you take work outside your ability to perform, if you really are in over your head, that's a problem. Dealing with clients of questionable integrity in their relationships with you and people like you. Not necessarily questionable integrity in general. That would rule out 30% of everybody I've ever worked for. So I'm not running a church. I mean, so, but there has to be honor among thieves, if you will. And so, like, if they arrive at my doorstep now, cold, I kind of know they've got problems somewhere else, because I'm the most expensive guy on the planet. So the reason they're there, right, is because 4 other people have fired them. So my deal is, you need to have litmus tests, and one is, you know, if I can't find 3 people who've done business with you who say they would do business with you again, we're not going to do business, right? Because I kind of know I'm not going to be the one to cure all the bad behavior. Clients with actual or probable legal problems. You'll see in my contracts language about all this, but you make your own decisions, because you can wind up sitting in a room with the Attorney General of Iowa having a discussion at some length about your work with client A. And so you make your own decisions about that, but you ought to be aware of it, cognizant of it, careful of it. Clients who operate under FTC consent decrees. I have 3 of them right now. It's okay as long as I know. But in some respects, it's actually better because they're constrained from doing certain things they would normally like to do. Okay? But if you don't know, that's a whole other issue altogether. Emergencies. Clients with emergencies, you can get a lot of money from them, but you have very low likelihood of success. And very low likelihood of long-term relationships. So I told her a story this morning. I'm not going to take time to tell it now, but the 911 call, because they are in trouble for one reason or another, you have to make conscious choices about all that. It usually requires you to drop everything else you're doing in order to perform well, and you almost know going in the result won't be good. The result will just be not as bad as it would be. So it's the stimulus argument, right? We can't prove it did anything, but imagine how much worse everything would be if we hadn't done it. That's the position you'll be in. And so you better be well paid for it. What do you do when someone's retreating from a deal? We'll get to that in correspondence. I'm going to skip the entire, I'm just going to skip a bunch of stuff. Jump to page 44. This is important. So there's what I call, in every business and in every task, there's a good enough spot. Okay? So first of all, not all GE spots are in the same place. This is extremely frustrating to males. 1 or 2, huh? Okay. Well, they're not, okay? So forget copy, think about a simple business. So Southwest Airlines has a different GE spot than American. Okay? You have certain expectations of Southwest about which will controls your satisfaction. And you're okay with being herded on like cattle, and the stampede at the gate, and the little colored passes, because they only give you peanuts and nothing else, and you don't care about any of that because you've been set up in advance. Southwest is all about getting where you're going on time. That's the deal. That's their GE spot, and almost nothing else matters. You fly first class on American, you have an entirely different set of expectations, therefore they're stuck with an entirely different GE spot. Right? So all businesses have it, right? If we were in a Ritz, Ritz-Carlton has a different GE spot than this hotel in terms of what's in the room, the personnel, everything, right? So it's situational. It's never absolute. The most important thing is there is little benefit to you in achieving more than good enough results, unless your royalties are tied in to maximum results. Otherwise, and even then sometimes. So if you spend too much time achieving, let's just use something simple. So cost per sale is 200 bucks, and you get it down to 180. If you spend a ton of time getting it down to 165, and now don't move the client on to 6 other opportunities that were bigger and better opportunities in his business, and therefore better opportunities for you to work on, and he was happy with 180, right? You've accomplished nothing with all that effort to get it down to 165. You're nothing. He's making plenty of money at 165. He's happy at 165. He thinks you're a genius at 165. Move on to the next thing, especially if the next thing is an even bigger, better opportunity. So there may be a chair further away from the furnace in the afterlife for maximum results in every situation. I don't know, but there's no real reward here unless it is directly affecting your money. And even then, you have to be careful not to be getting too much over here at the expense of not also going over here and going over here and going over here and going over here. So like right now I have a client, they came to me for front end. They want to improve their front end results, first transaction, conversion of customer. The big opportunity is in, they have a 35% refund rate. Okay, now they're making a ton of money, and so they are ignoring it. Okay? The big opportunity is there, huge, because they're not doing anything to control it. So with a series of stick letters, sales letters that remind you why you bought it in the first place and make you happy about buying it, right? I can probably cut that to 20%. There's 15 points there to be had, okay? And it's a ton of money. So all I'm going to do with the front end is enough to improve where they're at. I want to be done with that in a week because I want to spend my time over here. Now, if I spent 4 months and I did more research and I did more work and I did more variables and we tested more variables, could I improve the front end even more than I'm going to? Yes. And maybe if we have a long enough relationship, I'll get all the way back around to it. But right now, I want to do just enough to satisfy them on that count so we can focus on this, where there's an enormous amount of money to be had. And guess what? On the front end, because the cost of acquisition is very high anyway, the kind of business they're in, the size of volume they do, they can only give me a 1% royalty. On this, that they don't think is any big opportunity anyway, we're splitting the reduction in the refunds. Well, if I'm right about 15 points, 7 points of that's mine. Now, eventually, they're going to want to buy it out, which I'll show you in the contract, which is fine, but say, for them and for me, it's better to go spend the time over here than it is to spend the time over here. So good enough, right? Okay, I want to start showing you some things. So on page 46, you have a page, looks like this. For the sake of speed, because you have them in your book, I'm not going to put them up on this thing, okay? You can't see them up there anyway. You're going to ride along with me in the book, and I'm going to look at my notes. Is that okay with everybody? Good. Okay, so page 46. This is the basic language if we're going to have a consulting relationship. Now you can read all this at home. I'm just going to call attention to a couple things. If you want to mark them, you can. So number 1 essentially says no warranty of non-disclosure. So item A is no warranty of non-disclosure or confidentiality. That's important because signing non-disclosure agreements and signing confidentiality agreements is an invitation to be litigated against. That's what it is. And I don't know about you, but I haven't seen anybody yet with an original idea. They all think they got one, but they don't. I got 50 duplicates in my file drawer, okay? And too much stuff crosses my desk. This comes up a lot, by the way, for me. And the answer always is, I don't sign them, I don't agree to them, here's why I don't. And furthermore, here's the paper trail that not only didn't I sign yours, you signed mine that says no agreement of non-disclosure or confidentiality. Number two, indemnity. Okay? The indemnity clause essentially says, whatever the hell they do with what I give them, it's on them, it's not on me. And if anybody asks me, so if I do have to have that conversation with the Attorney General in Iowa, or the head of Consumer Protection in Tupelo, or whatever, they're paying all the costs for it. It's on them. Three is maybe the most important thing here. This is, it's headlined the word access. The real word here is limitation. Right? So this spells out the rules of the road for how we're going to work together and how we're going to communicate. The most important thing is rarely available on short notice. So Charlie's now frustrated that he can't pick up the call. He can't want me at 10 o'clock and get me at 10:05. Wait a minute, Charlie. You signed this thing, for Christ's sake. Not only did I tell you, I gave it to you in writing, and you signed it. No right to complain, right? Well, no, I guess so. Okay? So the rules of the road are spelled out. Conflicts of interest. Now this is a disclosure paragraph. Okay? This says, if I bring him Dean and I turn him over to Dean, I'm getting a check from Dean, and I'm not keeping it a secret. I may tell him, I may not, but I've told him here, and I've told him then that I may tell him or I may not. Okay? So there's no secrets. Okay? The next page is a version of the same thing for the day. Okay? And so this is my diagnostic day, or any consulting day. Okay? And it includes that they can't screw with the schedule. So the first thing says, once you've bought it, Bubba, you own it. I don't want to hear that you suddenly had to go to a wedding and we need to reschedule. No dice. So everybody knows that ahead of time. You bought a day, you own it. It also has my right, however, to screw with the schedule. Okay? Two, it tells them they should record the damn thing. Okay? So I have clients all the time, nitwits. Not only don't they show up with recording equipment if you don't tell them to, they show up without a pencil. I mean, it's like, I'm here. Well, wonderful. 7 hours from now, what are we going to have here? Right? And from my standpoint, I want it recorded because if I'm going to do work for them, I want the recording of the whole day we just spent together, because I said a lot of smart stuff that I don't remember that I need to use to do the work for them. Okay? So they're told to bring recording equipment. Same absence of warranties. The day is spelled out. You'll also see that the day, details of the day, tells them exactly where they're supposed to stay, where they're supposed to be, when they're going to get picked up, when they're going to get plunked back out of there. So there's no questions about that. The last one tells them how to get me stuff in advance to look at. Okay? All right. Then there's the issue of questionnaire. So I wasn't going to do that. So page 48. So questionnaires, a lot of people use them. I haven't used them in a long time. I mean, I have it in my head, and I'll sometimes prepare notes ahead of time of questions I want to ask, but I don't have to fill out a questionnaire. But there's a lot of good reasons to do it, especially if you are a little light on authority. Making them do the questionnaire imposes some authority. It also exposes inadequacies. So if you structure it right, it's a great way to make the client feel even more inadequate than they were when they called you in the first place, okay, which is good. Okay? It also makes them invest time in advance. And the more time they already have invested in you, the more likely they are to hire you. The less likely they are to walk away empty. Structured right, it demonstrates how smart you are. And there's even some reassurance to the fact that you even have a process. So especially if you're light on authority, the very fact that you have a process is kind of reassuring. Okay? We're not going to go through them. I've given you 2 of them. So I've given you, what have I given you? I've given you the one I built for our independent business advisors to use, our Glazer Kennedy independent business advisors, and it goes from 49 to 68. And it really is a variation of the one I used to use many, many moons ago. And I've also, on page 69, I've given you the critique form that I use and our independent business advisors use when we do a critique for somebody. So, for example, some of my products, some of my books have a critique coupon in it. If I sell a product from the front of the room, I'll bonus a critique coupon. That allows them to send to me any piece, sales letter, website, whatever, they have to send it. And I'll critique it. Most of them get this critique form, and that's it. Unless I spot somebody who looks like a good client, they then get a letter, and they get a more customized, personalized response. But it still follows this structure. So there's a couple of questionnaires. Starting on page, hey, if you want to hand out, Denise, did you hand out a thing that looks like this? Huh? Yeah. Because we're going to get to it in about 2 minutes. So starting on page 74, you have my little communication control forms. I mix them up because I'm dealing with the same people all the time, and I think it's nice to be amusing. But so the first one is sort of my answer to email. All 3 of them mostly control the FedExes. I found over the years that staff sometimes, surprisingly, doesn't take the FedEx into the person. There's a, we never got that. Almost never has FedEx actually failed to deliver it or lost it. But now there's communication in my office. My office has to go find and prove that it was delivered at 10 o'clock last Tuesday. Barbara Rabinowitz signed for it. This heads all that off because I give them the FedEx air bill number and I tell them the day it was sent that it was sent, which tells them it's arriving tomorrow. If it doesn't get there, they can call FedEx and chase it down. They don't need to bother me, and now they're looking for it, right? So those are little forms. Now, the thing I've given you next, let me find those documents, because I need to do them. I need one of those. I need one of those, Denise. For some reason, I don't seem to have mine for some reason. I don't know why that is, but okay. So these don't have page numbers, so you're going to have to stay with me. So I'll show it to you. So this one, right, which you'll see, urgent response for Delaney. So this is a response to somebody who wanted a consulting day on very short notice. Okay? And so this addresses that, and I'm looking for something that I don't have. So this is from 2005, incidentally. So this starts out by telling them they can't have a short notice day. Truth is, I want to give this guy a short notice day. I know him in the past, and there's a lot of work there to be had. So it starts out by telling him there's no way to have a short notice day, and he's going to screw up my vacation, and on and on and on, okay? Then it takes it away further by telling him I got a client that might be in conflict, that I wouldn't work with him unless I cleared it with the client first. Now, I happen to know the client isn't going to say no, but I've raised the issue anyway, okay? Then I lay down the fee, plus I want some additional stuff because I'm screwing up my vacation and I'm meeting with them on short notice. So I want to bake myself into this promotion. Okay? Then I tell them I'm not going to have any time to take on any copywriting assignments. Whatever we get done during the day is what we get done during the day. What that's going to make him do is try and kill me to get me to take the copywriting assignment at the end of the day, and pretty much fee resistance will be non-existent because I've told him he can't have it. Then at the end, I offer to refer him to somebody to solve his problem if he doesn't want to solve his problem with me. Okay? I think the first project was, I don't know, $45,000 or something. He wound up spending a couple hundred. Okay? 06, you have one looks like this, 2706. So this is a client who has sent me stuff. The greatest invention since sliced bread in dental care. He's kind of cold. He came to me cold. So you'll see that the letter deals with, again, not being very available, essentially, and then making it very clear that this isn't going to be about the day. I'm only going to liberate a day from him if he's prepared to spend X amount of money on his project on the back end. So I've laid the money right out there to start with. Okay? And as a third alternative, I offer to refer him to somebody who could help him if he doesn't want me. The commonality here in those two and in many others is a lot of takeaway. Some of it essentially is real. I mean, the guy was screwing up my vacation. And I did have to deal with the explanation to Carla of why there's a day less vacation, which is painful. So that's real. The fact that I'm not going to take this other guy unless he is prepared to spend X, that's real. Okay? But it's also manipulative. Okay? It is also about controlling things from the beginning, like fee resistance. Like, well, those 3 days don't work for me. Can I have, no. See, so that's all headed off in advance. Here is one. Your next one should be 53006. Okay? So this is somebody, they came for a day, we worked for a day, they sent me some follow-up stuff, and so this is now response to the queries they raised in their follow-up. Okay? Now what's important here, the reason I'm showing it to you, is the second paragraph. Okay? They asked me a question about who they should go get to do their website work that we discussed during the day they were with me. Okay? So I tell them 2 places to go see it done well, like we talked about during that day. I then tell them that recommending somebody is a bit of a problem. Okay? I'm going to put out a few feelers this week and try and get a few options to you late next week. This is a common ingredient you're going to see now as we go along. I don't want to give them everything all at once. Okay? I want to make it look like what I'm doing for them is more difficult than it is. Like I'm putting myself out more than I am. Why? Because it obligates them. Okay? And so like, here's another example. When they come to my house for a consulting day, okay? So I got all my stuff there, right? Everything. Okay? If I know you're coming and you're an XYZ business and I've seen your stuff, even before the diagnostic conversation, I kind of know what we're going to talk about. Right? So I could neatly organize in the conference room these samples out of all my stuff that I'm going to want to show you as we go along during the course of the day. However, that's not as impressive as me going back into the storeroom and rooting around and finding something for you. Essentially going out, hunting, killing it, and dragging it back for us to eat. Okay? That they like better. Okay? Because I'm going to all this trouble. And now I know right where it is. Okay? So I could have done it ahead of time, but they're happier because I don't do it ahead of time. Okay? Same thing here. So now, a week later, I get back to him with information that I have hunted and killed for him and had to go to trouble to get, and he's happier, and he's more obligated, and he is now more likely to be compliant and do business. I could have put it in this letter. I just didn't. Okay? So it's posture, I admit. Okay. Now this involves the same client. This guy was a referral. So also then, on 53006, goes the report to the person who referred, which in this case is Greg Ranker at Guthrie Ranker. So I'm flippant with Greg all the time. So this is to Greg, the king of all he can see. And so the first paragraph is a report on these guys he referred to me, which they're kind of nutballs. So I tell them they're kind of nutballs, and I didn't take them as clients, but here's what I've done for them, and thank you very much anyway, you know. And then I use that as an excuse to get into something else with Greg. Point being, if you do get a referral, you should always report. They want to know, and they deserve to know. And you want to control what they're told. You don't want the person they referred, especially if it's somebody things didn't go well or you didn't accept. You want to be the one to report that, not them reporting it. Okay. Your next one, this is a response to a critique. So this is somebody who sent in their stuff to be critiqued. And instead of getting a form, they got this letter. The reason they got this letter is they look like a decent client. They happen to be an information marketer to attorneys. Okay? So here's their critique and recommendations. A little bit of work for them. I rewrote her headline. There's a number of places where I have identified what's wrong. I haven't provided any fix. All I'm doing is diagnosing. I'm not prescribing. Right? So, for example, the offer and pricing more complicated than need be. Right? Now, the key paragraph is on the second page. Okay? So, she asked about, so her PS with her critique was, how much, the question, as I recall, the question almost always is, how much would it cost to have you fix this, do all this for us? Okay? So here's the answer, right? First paragraph is actually a little selling. Okay? So this is talking about relevant experience. So she sells to lawyers. So I have a client who markets, okay? The second paragraph now, first of all, introduces, I may have a problem, I may not be able to take you. Okay? So I got to go kill something in order to be able to accept you. Secondly, I'm not taking any new clients where the project fees aren't going to be between X and Y. So there's no secret there. I don't really want her buying a $10,000 day and not being able to do anything. And timing, so this was in, when was this? April. First openings for new clients are August and September of this year. So now, what she's doing is coming back and convincing me that A, she's prepared to spend 150 grand or whatever it takes, and B, I can't wait till August. Great. We can probably take care of her. Now, she wants it more because I told her she had to wait till August than if I hadn't told her she had to wait till August. Now, the legitimacy of that is that I do only pre-schedule a certain number of days every month for consulting days. And then theoretically, I don't take any more. Okay? However, if somebody pops up who I really want, I can do anything I want. So there's some legitimacy to it. There's also posturing. I am not at all ashamed by the posturing. I'm just pointing out to you that there's posturing. The next one is a client who's gotten fussy. In addition to their scheduled call, they're calling my staff person and screaming that they need to talk to me and they need to talk to me like right now. So this is their answer. The next one is turning down a speaking engagement. What's important about it, so this is, Bloomberg's doing a series of seminars all across the country, by the way, and I knew the minute I saw the thing sent to me from my publisher that they're not going to want to spend any money, right? Which is true, incidentally. So, and I'm not interested in working for free, so this is probably not a good match. Okay? But you never know if somebody will spend money, even though they weren't prepared to spend money. So the first paragraph really says, I probably don't fit because of compensation requirements, but then the rest of the paragraph is really, but here's all the reasons why you ought to hire me and pay it anyway. Okay? So it is really a sales paragraph. Okay? It's kind of a half-hearted attempt because I think I know the outcome, but nonetheless, it's a pitch, just in case, right? Then there's other things, ways to solve their problem, so I suggest people that we might, refer to them that could meet their needs. The next one, let's see what the next one is. So this is from this year. Okay. This is actually the guy I told you about. So this is the $75,000 project. So this is the precursor to it. So the first paragraph, so on our call, which he's paying for, he's now got a new opportunity that has opened up in his business. So I immediately found a research report about that market and ordered it for him. It cost me, I don't know, $100, $200. He paid $1,000 for the call, so, so what, right? So I have that sent to him right away. He wouldn't know it existed. I happen to. Beyond that, what am I really doing? I'm obligating him, right? That's what I'm doing, okay? Then second, I can connect him with somebody. So the second paragraph is about connecting him with somebody. The third paragraph then is because he brought it up. So now this says if you have serious interest, keyword serious. He brought up, it may be time to have you work for me again and do this project, but it was sort of a casual, oh, by the way, part of the conversation. So this is if you have serious interest, okay? I suggest meeting while I'm in Dallas, yada, 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 work it out with Vicki. Otherwise, I'm happy to provide the telephone consulting, which I am. Okay? Now, the PS is really important. So, a few random thoughts I didn't get to in the call. Well, here's why I didn't get to them in the call. Because I wanted to give them to him after the call. Okay? Just like the other one I showed you. So I want more than one contact, a reason for more than one contact, and I want the demonstration that I am thinking about him and I am going on his behalf and finding something, killing something, and getting it to him to eat. So I have come back to him. He was happy with the call, but now I have given him more. Okay? The next one, you're going to get all my contracts too, by the way. We're going to get there. The next one, see what this is. Oh, this is fairly common language for me. So this is actually to a guy who was on one of our member calls. So he's a Glazer Kennedy member. I think he didn't win Marketer of the Year, but he was on the Marketer of the Year competition. So there's a salesy paragraph, which my salesy paragraphs almost always start with the words, as you probably know. They probably don't know. That's why I'm telling them. But they're supposed to. Okay? So almost all my salesy paragraphs start with, as you probably know. Okay? Then, the real important paragraph here is, I rarely prospect for clients or hunt for opportunity. Actually, I do it all the time. Well, that's exactly what I'm doing. Okay? So, but I rarely prospect for clients or hunt for opportunity. But in your case, all right, I want. So that led to an appointment, and it's pretty close to leading to a project. Okay, next one, which looks like this, and it dates to '02. So this is an '02 version of my contract, which I'm going to give you the current ones. This is an '02 version of a contract done as a confirmation letter. And so you'll see there's a project description, and then all the stuff they're going to get in their project. There's the paragraph about continuing advice and services, which really is the limitation paragraph. What you get, what you don't get, how you reach me, that sort of thing. There's compensation, so it spells out the money. Okay. This one has a royalty in it, so you'll see a royalty paragraph. You'll see a paragraph of how the royalties are supposed to be paid. There's an indemnity clause, same as the other agreement. There's an ownership of work clause, which is real important. So essentially, that says they own it, but I got the right to use it. That's essentially what that paragraph says. Okay. You'll see in the current contract, it's even more verbose. There's timetable, okay, of when they're going to get stuff, and sign, okay. Now, the current one's a little more complicated, but you'll see great similarity. Next, 2010, see here. Okay, so this is a client who worked his way to a phone appointment. We had a conversation about the project. He then came back to me with the facts that narrowed it. I am broadening it back. Okay? So to be a bit clearer, that translates to I was clear and you're now dicking with it. So we're going to put it back the way it was. That's what that says. Okay? So to be a bit clearer, okay, and then this goes on to describe the project. Okay? The next paragraph is a fee issue paragraph. This is a long-time old client, haven't done anything for them in a while. They're not used to my current fees. So all along I have been desensitizing them to the fact that they're going to be asked for a number they're not going to like. So this is, if I do this, I want to do it right with no scrimping or corner cutting. So it will require substantial time commitment, yada, yada, yada. This is bracing them for the price, right? That's what it is. Then, right behind it is their contract. So you can see the contract for this actual piece, for this project. I took the money out, but it's 6 figs. And again, so there's a description of the project. There's the limitation paragraph. Now you'll notice some of these paragraphs are in a block typeface, and some of them are in Times Roman. The Times Roman, the ones that are in the block typeface are in there to communicate that they are standard. The Times Roman are the variable paragraphs that change for the client. So this is to reduce, this is to say we don't negotiate these paragraphs. Everybody agrees to these paragraphs. These are my standard paragraphs. That's why that's done that way. Okay? The indemnity clause you will see is now much longer. The ownership of work clause is now much longer. It references specific ways in which I may choose to use the work. Timetable's the same. Term of agreement, in their case, they have an out. And that's that. Now, so this contract goes to, now this is a big, dumb company, so they don't move real quick. So ordinarily, like, if I'm sending you a contract, it's coming back next day. These guys don't work that way. So now I got to worry about this falling apart between the time I've sent it to them and the time I get it, because there's a certain committee activity going on. I mean, it's a really big, dumb company. So March 11th, they get this fax, which its purpose is to obligate them to the contract. So it now tells him about work I've already done and that I've already begun. Those of you that are on my reader team will recognize this. This is about you. Then the next page is really interesting because this tells me he has handed the contract off to a junior nitwit. He's apologizing because the junior nitwit's response to the contract is not very polite. But he thinks his concerns are valid. So this is bad news. This is negotiation. Okay? Now right behind it, you will see the junior's fax to me nitpicking the contract. So he is unhappy about the fact that I have disclosed that they may get shit that I've done 46 times before. He's unhappy that the contract says I may let somebody else do some of the work. He's really unhappy with the part that says I'm going to use the stuff in 86 different other places. So he's objecting to them funding creation of content that I'm using in other places. And he's objecting to the legal indemnity, as strong as it is. He's basically saying it's all on you, not on me. We have other minor concerns about the payment terms. Oh, great. So we're raising that too. So basically what's left is the name at the top and the name at the bottom, and he wants to object to everything else. Okay? You next have my response, not to the junior. I will not be moved down the food chain here, nor should you. Okay? So this is my response back to the president of the deal about the one I got from the junior. So the first paragraph is an attempt to be entertaining, because we have known each other for a long time. So your fax of April 1st, I assume, was not for April Fool's Day. No need to be a diplomat, yada, yada. Okay. Second paragraph says, I'm going to address this stuff, but the contract isn't a proposal. It's my standard agreement every client accepts. Okay. So that's like the first volley across the bow here. Right? So the first complaint, my answer is essentially, if I got something that already has worked 6 times and I can adapt it for you, you ought to be happy about that, not grumpy about it. Why do you want me creating an experiment from scratch when I can give you something that works? So that's my answer to that. The second one is the answer to the little clause that says I may use other people, which is basically says I don't. However, ultimately, if I have a secret room full of incredibly gifted monkeys working just for bananas who managed to come up with the greatest ad ever, and I merely apply a coat of polish to it and add my name, what do you care? What you want from me is the best possible outcome. How I get to it is irrelevant. Okay? Now, really, it's kind of hard to argue with that, isn't it? If you want an ad that works, and I got a horse in the barn who will tap on a typewriter with his hoof and produce an ad that works, what do you give? Who cares, right? Third, so this is simply if I can't show off and use the work, it doesn't pay me to do it even at these fees. I've always done it. I always will. And in this case, there's already some of their stuff in my sales letter book. So this has already happened before, right? So, for example, yes, you are funding my creation of material from which I receive additional revenue, and that's part of the bargain, yada, yada. Okay? The last one, I answer the thing about legal. I answer the termination thing. I answer the disclosures. And then I make it a little personal, because again, we've had a long relationship. So the next to last paragraph is a general comment. I've had a long, if interrupted, relationship with you in which neither my value or integrity. Now, the guy didn't question my integrity, by the way, and he really didn't question the value, but I'd rather make the argument about that than about all this nitpicky stuff, because they aren't going to want to question my integrity or my value. So I'd rather reframe it as that, right? And so then finally, this is the crap or get off the pot paragraph. It says enough is enough, guys. So sign the damn thing or don't sign it, but we're moving on. Okay? That got the contract signed. Now, the junior guy is probably not happy with me. And so he is going to be a fly in the ointment in the future. I already know that. But I can only solve one problem at a time. So I want my $200 and some odd thousand in place. Now I'll worry about what I'm going to do about him. Right? I will do two things, by the way. I will go back and try and fix the relationship with him because I have time. I'm not delivering anything until July. So in the interim, I will make nice. Okay? But I will know that that may not be sufficient. And so now when it's time to deliver work, I will know that I've got a potential saboteur in the woodpile here that I have to deal with. But I can only solve one problem at a time. The next one, so this is in response to a client inquiry, new client, never done anything with them before, came to me at cold. They're actually a referral from Gary Halbert. Although Gary's dead, that's still the point of connection. The client's father was a Gary Halbert client and knew me through Gary. They are now coming to me as a quasi 911. They are coming to me because they got problems. There's a little sale paragraph, the second paragraph. Now the next paragraph, because of the way they phrased their inquiry, okay, to be clear, I do not operate as a copywriter given assignments. Okay, so the inquiry that came to me was, because what Halbert did for him way back when, is he wrote him an ad and a tear sheet. Okay, and results are finally starting to decline after all this time. What they want is a new ad and a new tear sheet, and how much will you charge? That sort of was the query. Okay? So this is the answer. I do not operate as a copywriter given assignments, rather as a strategic marketing advisor who often, but not always, also writes copy. Now there's more sales. Okay? But I've switched to selling the diagnostic day, which is what I want to sell. Okay? So I've switched to selling the diagnostic day. I've also disclosed we're talking about 50 to 100K or more. Okay? When we finally figure out what the hell it is I'm going to do for you. Now, my office is in Phoenix, which you may or may not know, and these guys are in Phoenix. So it's a natural assumption since my office is in Phoenix that I'm in Phoenix. I'm not. Okay? So I got to correct that because they had in their head he can just drive across town. You know, the bad news is not only can't I drive across town, I ain't driving across town. And if I happen to come there, I'm flying private, which kind of bumps up the cost here. However, I was able to use it as a lever to move them along because the truth is I really was going to Vegas, which had been a piece of bad news because I was flying private and the likelihood of recovering it at the craps table is not good. So now I can recover it. So that's actually even better news. Okay? So then this moves him to a phone appointment, and I start out letting him know I usually clump all my phone appointments into 1 or 2 days a month, which is true, by the way. But I've told Vicki not to delay yours for the next available day. So that now is another form of obligation. I'm breaking the rules. I'm making an exception. I'm bumping them to the front of the line, etc. Okay? The next letter you see is he's bought the day. And so this is the confirmation letter for the day. The next letter you see is, after contract, he objected to the part of the contract that has to do with me using his stuff. So this letter is an answer to that, plus an answer to a couple of his other questions. And finally is a letter when he finally got the contract in. So now the dates in the contract are no good because he sat on the damn thing. So now I got to recalibrate the dates. So that's that piece of that puzzle. So that's all correspondence. Right? And we'll get to contracts before the day's done, more of that. But that's all correspondence. And you have right there an old version of the contract, and you have a very current version of the contract. You will see not a lot has changed. My financial position has changed dramatically. I really couldn't afford to do what I was doing, but I did it. And so, but the contract hasn't changed much. So we have 15 minutes left where we can fit in a couple of questions. So if somebody has one, you make your way to the table, please. And when we come back from lunch, we're going to fit in about 15 minutes of Q&A there as well. And so we're 15 minutes away from lunch.